like to say that we're going to now go to the United States of America, and my next guest is Wittenstein, who is a top keynote speaker. He's got over 3 decades experience, and he pioneers the use of story in business. And he's shown hundreds of leaders how to use stories to win buy-in as they introduce their most important ideas. Mike, hello there, all the way across the Atlantic Ocean. Great to have you here. How are things doing for you? Are you 5 hours or 7 hours behind? Whereabouts are you?
We are 5 hours behind. 5 hours behind. So it's about 9:30 in the morning here. So just getting started on the day, and already so excited from hearing the last few speakers.
Yeah, indeed. Well, you got your pajama bottoms on probably still.
I can stand up with confidence. I did not do that today.
Mike, the floor is yours. Good luck. I'll see you back in 15 minutes.
This is such an exciting time, and no matter where you are or what you do, now's a time for you to be a leader. I read a number of years ago that there were about 500 people who ran things on planet Earth, 500 leaders. Now we need like 50 million leaders. And I'd like to share with you some thoughts about story. Story is something that can help your voice be heard louder and help you lead better. But let's put a couple of things into perspective first. It's been only 17 years, and we've already been through 3 seismic events. We've been through 9/11, the Great Recession, and now we have the coronavirus pandemic. And each time, everything changed, everything. And you know what? Each time, nothing was the way it was going to be ever after that. So what we've got now is a world where everything will be first of a kind. And that means that we need a different kind of leadership. What we've got now is a situation with first of a kind where everything is absolutely brand new. Everyone's on Zoom. We've got different patterns in our life, different responsibilities. Some of us are working, some of us aren't. But what people are looking for is best practices, and those don't exist yet. Everyone's got to figure this out on their own. Rapalong talked about that with the sprints. The thing is that a lot of your leaders are looking for what to do, but there are no best practices. What they want to do is they want to hear from you that you believe in them. They want to know that there's something else to believe in. And the cool thing is that stories are what let people connect. So there are a couple of storytellers that I wanted to share with you who I think have done a really good job at motivating us to move forward. John F. Kennedy said that when we send a man to the moon by the end of the decade and return him safely, and that launched the whole space race in 1962. But the thing is the capability of space travel didn't exist yet. What JFK did is he willed it into being with a speech. Let's hear a couple of his words.
If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. We shall send to the moon, 240,000 miles away, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth.
So what Kennedy did is he gave people reasons to believe. You may not have the power of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration behind you, but you can tell a story. And today we're going to talk about how to do that. Don't worry, all the components that you need are already inside of you. But stories are the things, like Sean said, that move people, that include them, that spark them, and that stir their hearts. There's one more storyteller in more modern time that's made a huge difference. And I think you know who he is. Signature jeans and a black shirt. Steve Jobs literally, and his company, changed the world. Let's take a look at how he did it.
So, 3 things. A widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone, Are you getting it?
So what Jobs did is didn't just talk about make-believe. You know, Kennedy, when he made his future story speech, talked about what was to come. But Jobs did something very different. And this is one of your two options. You can make the future before you talk about it. You can help people to believe it because they can see it with their own eyes. What he did was the hard work before he made the big announcement. He put 3 devices, 3 different technologies into a single device, which made it much more valuable for us. He got the largest telecommunications company in the world, AT&T, to change the way they develop products and services, to even change the pace of the organization on the inside to support the introduction of the iPhone. And Apple created the App Store. So what his story did was give us these superpower feelings to work and live better. If you listen to that whole keynote speech, it was filled with examples of what you could actually do with a device. And people felt empowered instantly, and of course the desire grew. That was masterful storytelling and what Steve Jobs was known for so long. That is really the power of story. So as a leader, you can pick either kind of future story to work with. You can pick the kind that Kennedy did, where you rally the troops and you get people excited about what they can do. You paint a really clear and compelling vision of the future. Or you can do what Jobs did, and you can build the future first and then announce it. Interestingly, one of the things that the folks at Apple did was to build user stories. They actually started thinking about what their customers wanted first. They put value into that, and that's how they came up with a lot of the design for the iPhone. So a future story has a few components to it. It is set in the future. So here's the thing. When you're telling a future story, you don't have to start building a bridge and helping people feel more comfortable about the future. You need to let them come to it. You need to let them make the discovery. You and your teams probably have some ideas already about what it's like or how you'd like it to be. You just need to step into that and flesh that out a little bit more. The other thing is, instead of talking to other people, you need to talk about them. They need to be the ones that are in the center of the story. You tell the story from their point of view. I'm sure you can imagine some teachers in your life that just enraptured you. And a lot of the speakers today were talking not to you, but with you. You felt like you were in conversation, even though the communication was in one direction. That's one of the secrets of really good future storytelling. The other is it makes people feel comfortable because you never declare their weaknesses. You point out continuously, time after time, how this new thing, whatever's in your future, is going to make people feel more comfortable. They're going to like that. They're going to lean into that. Then you tell them what part of it they have to play. And that's where they get excited about helping you build what that future is. So your story can get so much stronger when you bring your audience all the way into it. So there are 6 elements in building a future story. The first one is customer focus. Customer focus is all about making sure that your entire business is dedicated to creating value for your customers. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't make money for your shareholders or if you're a founder that you don't get to take home a nice paycheck. It just means that from the design of the business, you want to put creation value for customers first. Prioritize that. That's one of the secrets to making a future story work. As Sean said before, people need to know what their why is. And if you make the why about making money or hitting a quota, not too many people are going to be interested. If you make the why about making the world a better place or making your customers' lives better, they're 100% with you. The second thing is to include emotions. Any story has emotional elements to it. So does any business. So does every single brand on the planet. The way an organization sets up the clues of its business, how its returns work, how emails get sent on an automatic basis, what happens if there's an exception to the rules, all those little details end up making you feel something. As a leader telling stories to help people arrive at a common future, you need to take those clues into consideration, those unwritten ground rules, as Steve used to call them. And it's to make sure that there's a clear brand feeling that all of the details of your brand and your operations emit. Of course, you've got to declare the ground rules. Now, you don't list them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You make them part of the story that you're telling to your audience. You put them into your future story so people see them as templates. And as Graham talked about, you have to make your business adaptive. And there's a real science to doing that. Repalong talked about doing sprint teams. There are ways of replacing traditional organizational charts, which are all about command down and information up, with promise maps that indicate the accountabilities that each person has to the other. Basically, a brand is a giant promise-making machine. It makes one big promise to its customers. The business is charged with fulfilling it. Inside of that business, everyone makes promises to each other so that the work of the customer can be done. And that's something else that needs to come through in your future story. Next to last is to craft experiences. Remember we talked about how Apple would create signature user stories. Well, a signature experience is nothing more than an experience that many of your customers, or if you're a leader, many of your employees will have. That signature experience is what people become remembered for, and it's the story that they tell. If you create a really good experience, people are going to tell stories about it. And when they tell their friends and colleagues a story, that's the experience that they're all going to expect. The last point is the most important one of all. It's to make sure that your employees become the heroes of the story. It's all about making the story about them. We're basically talking in every one of the presentations today about how we have to change before our organizations will change. So if you put your employees on a hero's journey path, like a Harry Potter or a Luke Skywalker, they're the one who can make the big things happen. That's what they're going to love. That's what they're going to remember. That's what's going to really draw them in. So how do you write a future story? How do you make it happen? Well, you really can't write a future story. You have to design it. So let's talk about that for just a little bit. First of all, you don't have to be afraid of starting with a blank piece of paper or an empty Word doc. All you have to do is think about what it's like to be like your people. Imagine what their days are like. Imagine what the things are that they care about the most and what they're most worried about, and start designing around that. Because after all, your employees are your customers. Here's some examples of what some other folks have done already, and I'd like you to take a look at the stories of each of these leaders and the points on the left. So one of the things that Kennedy did that was so cool is he got an entire nation engaged in a single story. All kinds of new material science was invented because of that powerful story. The way Congress worked changed because of that story. How people came together, the pride that this created for our country and actually for the entire world, all happened because of a single story. We've already talked about Steve Jobs, but he changed the way his business and his partners' businesses worked in order to deliver that story. We so often talk about low-hanging fruit and quick wins. I think there's a lot more opportunity to tackle much larger projects, and story is one of the tools that you can use to make bigger strides a lot faster by showing people what a big outcome might look like, because people get excited by that. Disney is one of my favorites. Favorite storyteller, favorite business person. I grew up in Orlando, Florida. I was there when Disney World opened on the East Coast in 1971. What was so interesting about story is the company of Disney was based on cartoons, on Mickey Mouse. First film was called Steamboat Willie. But now the Disney empire spans so many businesses. They're on cable, they've got distribution, they do books, comic books, movies, theaters, they're on Broadway. They have even their own cruise ship, not to mention the theme parks. So all of that ties together in story, and you can experience it as you move from one modality into another. Jeff Bezos with Amazon did something similar. He built an entire company based on selling books out of his garage. The story behind it, the value for customers, and always leaning in to imagine the future was cool. To this day, Amazon uses a 6-page brief, up to 6 pages, to clearly identify an idea, and it's often told from the customer's point of view. So story is embedded in their culture. And of course, we all know about Elon Musk. And what he does is he gives people, customers, and employees the opportunities to be the hero in the story of saving the planet. So he does an amazing job at that. So what does all this mean for you? What do you have to do? And this may be really the hardest part, because when it comes to change, what everybody wants is for everybody else to change. The important thing is for you to think a little bit differently. When you think differently, you can actually challenge your own biases. You can start to learn new things. You can lean in and see what makes others think. And that lets you get to better design. Because when you understand your customers and the employees that you serve better, you're able to make decisions for them and not just do things to them. As we heard from several speakers today, context is so important. Context sets the stage for what you're talking about and why it matters. If you can identify the why, you can unleash the power in your employees and in your customers, because you're actually part of the transformation that they're going through. And that's the whole notion of the hero's journey, and why in your stories, it's so important that you make your customers and your employees the hero. If you find yourself talking about yourself, about your product, your brand, your service, you're not on the right track. You've got to find a way to tell that story so that it's all about your customers and they can be the ones to enjoy the history. My wish for all of you is that you just think about where you are going down the path. What's around that corner and where can you try a future story? Remember to let other people play the hero and set others up to discover their own role in making it real. All right, Nadine, back to you.
I think that resonated really well, actually, that customers and employees are the real heroes. And I've seen that so much, particularly over the last 3 to 4 months. Those that have elevated customers and employers have had really the best traction. And when I hear entrepreneurs' stories, they feel so real. It's those larger companies that sometimes they don't feel very authentic. So how can they find that inner voice, that authenticity, so that customers, I don't know, some people don't want to hear about their histories. Being 100 years old may not be relevant to some people, but it may to others.
Yeah. You know what I think happens, and I've been inside of a lot of boardrooms and worked with a lot of large medium and startup brands. And what happens is people start to believe their own dialogue. It's kind of bizarre. So there are 2 things that you can do that are super, super easy to make a difference. The first one is, if you're in a leadership position, you can go out and spend a few hours spending time with your customers right where they are. And if that means going to their office, visiting with them at a coffee shop, or inviting them into the boardroom if you have to, but actually spend time with them and talk with them. The more you listen and the less you talk, the more you're going to learn. My grandmother told me that I have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I should use my ears more than my mouth. I've heard that from so many different, ethnic backgrounds. The other thing that you can do is something that I did when I was a kid. When I was 16, I went to Brazil for a year as an exchange student. And by being in a foreign culture, I had all of my cultural crutches knocked out from underneath me. It was hard, but it taught me so much. I really got to see the world, myself, from a totally different perspective, different eyes, different emotions. So do some internal exchange programs or exchange programs with your partners. Move people from the front lines to the back office and vice versa. Get one of your shipping clients to send you over an office worker and you send them over an executive to work on the front lines. That creates all kinds of conversations. And it's just a door opener. It's not specific, it's not directed at an outcome, but it does change your perspective. And that lets you set a better context and really understand the people you're talking to better.
Absolutely. And I know your biography is on the Speakers Corner website. You're founder and managing partner at Story Miners, and you've worked with some amazing brands from Delta Airlines, Holiday Inn, IBM, University of Phoenix, and obviously some pharmaceutical clients in there as well. Is every company unique? Are there certain things that unites them?
Every company does have its own little, its own DNA, its own personality, its own assessment grade, if you will. And what's really important to remember is that you can't copy what another brand is doing. They say that you can't copy somebody else because they're already taken, so be yourself. But the thing is if you're trying to copy somebody else's brand, strategy, operations, or in most cases, best practices. By the time you finish your change and you get to the promised land, they've already moved on. So it's kind of a guaranteed third place strategy. The really cool thing to do, and I love the way you asked the question, is to find out what's unique about you and your brand. And that starts by understanding what your customers need most. And to do that, you've got to double down on the listening and dedicate the brand to creating value for them. It doesn't mean you don't take a profit. It just means from the design of the business, the prioritization of projects, you do what adds value to the customer as they understand value. It might not be the same thing that you think.
Yeah, that's very wise word. Mike, we could carry on all day, but it's been 240 minutes nearly. We've still got our last segment before we end this show, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Nadine.
Good luck to America, and good luck with everything.